So first, this is Musaddeq Khan, Entrepreneurship in Residence here at GSU. And I'd like to give him the opportunity to share a little bit about himself with you guys.
Sure. Thank you for this opportunity. I really look forward to this panel. I am MK, short for Musaddeq Khan, and not Michael Kors, in case you're wondering. I am the entrepreneur in residence for the Main Street Entrepreneur Seed Fund program. You have not heard of it. It's sort of a cross-section between something like a Techstars and something like an incubator, like It Takes a Village or any of those incubator programs out there. We are focused on helping Georgia State University students, alumni, and community members sort of launch their businesses from zero to a certain milestone. And happy to be here.
All right. And next we have Sagdrina Jalal from the Center for Civic Innovation.
Hi, I'm Sagdrina Jalal. I am the Senior Director of Partnership and Programs for the Center for Civic Innovation. But I also like to introduce the fact that first and foremost, I am a social entrepreneur. I like to say that I was an accidental social entrepreneur. I started an organization in direct response to a personal family and community need, and realized that I had stumbled into a much bigger and broader path for myself. I'm the mother of 3 grown kids, so a recent empty nester and 1 grandson. And my middle son actually graduated from Georgia State School of Business with a degree in business marketing. So I'm very happy to be here. At the Center for Civic Innovation, I work with some of the most amazing social entrepreneurs in the city that are solving problems every day at the most grassroots level, and also in the most impactful ways imaginable. Particularly, I would say like the greatest cross-section of folks that come through our fellowship program are Black women. And so we've had an opportunity to really get to know the unique experiences, challenges, triumphs of social entrepreneurs and Black folks specifically, women, and them identifying most specifically. So super excited to be here to share those experiences.
And finally, we have Willie Sullivan, co-founder of the Peachtree Minority Venture Fund, and he's currently an equity transformation consultant at Deloitte.
Thank you. Good to see all of you this morning. Thank you, Ladarius, for asking me to join this. I'm super excited to talk and be a part of this with the other panelists. So for me, I was an MBA student at Emory University in 2019. And then in the summer of 2020, I had the opportunity to work on a project at Emory University called Black Entrepreneurship in Atlanta. So it was a study that was trying to figure out how Emory University could better support Black entrepreneurs in Atlanta, being the center of Black entrepreneurship in the United States. And that project was already beginning before the racial justice protest movement started. And so being a part of that study, simultaneously watching, all of what was happening and all of the different things that were coming out, as a part of this study, we spoke to multiple people in the entrepreneurship, venture capital space, people specifically working either more generally in incubators or accelerators or investment funds, generally, or more specifically with African-American entrepreneurs. And the number one thing that came out of all those conversations was access to capital still was the critical issue for so many entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs. So from that study, several ideas came out for Emory University, but one of the ones that I really spearheaded was the creation of a venture capital fund to actually have Emory University be making investments into Black founders and have that venture capital fund be run by students at Emory University. Student-run venture capital funds are actually pretty common these days at a lot of universities across the country, but we did not have one. And so we decided to make one specifically focused on Black, Latino, Latina, Native American entrepreneurs. And that started with a $1 million investment for then the students to make investments. We're super excited that We built a course around this so that the students would learn also, what venture capital is, but through the lens of equity and inclusion, which is what I do for my day job at Deloitte. And super excited that in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be able to announce our first investments into that first group of founders with investments from $25,000 to $50,000. So really excited to talk because I come at this less from the entrepreneur standpoint and more from the standpoint of someone that's trying to get money to those entrepreneurs to be able to build up, because access to capital is just important, and that capital can take many forms. Venture capital is just one of them. But looking at the statistics about how minority entrepreneurs can't even get loans, or the loan rates are low, all of the different accesses to capital, minority entrepreneurs are at the bottom of the list. So I'm really interested in really being involved in that side of things. So really excited to talk more about that.
The first question I have for you guys is really just an opportunity for you guys to define what social impact means to you. And we can start, let's start in the middle with Sagdrina.
Yeah. Gosh, might regret that. So, I think as Willie was talking about, like the single greatest need is access to capital. And I just cannot agree more. That being said, I think that social impact really has a lot to do with your overall network and your access not only to funds, but also to resources, to people in positions of authority, decision makers. So I think that what's really interesting about the folks that I work with is that they develop naturally and organically networks to support each other as they are whether it's and they have their own individual effort or they're working with a team to combine resources to multiply impact. So I think that is just like the natural spirit of a social entrepreneur, and that's like the purest definition of social impact. For me, of course, I'd like to see more dollars driven to those efforts, and also folks that are in positions to help that a little bit easier, opening up their checkbooks and their Rolodexes.
I would just say that I think we're living in an interesting time because social impact has been very narrowly focused and defined for a long time, and been very sitting right next to like philanthropy and charitable, work or corporate social responsibility, because it's been seen as a nice to have or a good to do, as opposed to this is something that there's a business case for this thing to happen. And so a lot of dollars, and this still happens today, a lot of dollars are being directed still to a corporation's foundation in order to do something, around housing in the community in which the corporation exists. But I think to one point that you were just making, the example you used around real estate. So during the racial justice protests, when all of the corporations were coming out and saying, these are the things we're going to do, most of the large financial institutions like JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs were coming out and saying, we're going to try to get more loans into minority communities for them to have home ownership or small business creation. And that takes social impact from philanthropy to now it's P&L, because that mortgage now sits on their balance sheet as a corporation, which I think is actually the proper thing, because now their careers depend on, okay, how many of these mortgages have you sold? How are they doing? All of those things, which takes it and makes it impact generally, as opposed to this narrow focus on social impact. And so I think social impact as a term may actually go away at some point or evolve, because that narrow definition is changing, which is good. But that doesn't mean also that philanthropic work should go away completely. It's just like the way we think about it and what we think are philanthropic endeavors versus basic business outcomes is very different.
Could you describe the social impact ecosystem in Atlanta currently and the role that you and your organization play in it?
Yeah, so during the beginning of the pandemic, we heard from a lot of our fellows, alumni. We've graduated about 100 folks through our programs. And what we learned very quickly was that the very same folks that were giving out money and, supposedly addressing the issues in communities were not investing in Black work and certainly not Black women. And so we really had to scramble and find ways to provide support, direct infusions of cash and even some very small quantities to help these entrepreneurs not only just stay afloat with the work that they're doing, but take care of their families. And so we were able to see the reality of the current state of social entrepreneurship, like in a very brutal and astonishing way. That prompted us to kick off a pretty extensive deep dives research into the giving practices, specifically of philanthropy, as a result of the COVID crisis. And it was horrific in terms of, just how decisions were being made and what was happening with the money that's there. So I would say, from my perspective, and specifically with Black women that are agents of change in our city, I would say that it's in a transitional stage. I think that we definitely have the attention of philanthropy around the needs of those that are actually doing the work in our city. And now we're in the position where we're starting to hold them accountable in a financial way, as well as, again, helping to support building those networks.
I think the ecosystem is evolving. The Main Street Seed Fund, so to be perfectly honest, I really got introduced to the concept of social entrepreneurship and impact through the Main Street Seed Fund. Because before that, I was so immersed in this high-tech, awesome thing going on all the time, talking about high tech and this and that. I never really looked up and thought about social entrepreneurship or social impact. And everything was I thought about for profit. But getting involved in Main Street, and the Main Street program is focused on underrepresented and minority and women entrepreneurs. And so getting involved in that opened my eyes to this concept of social impact. And it was really, really eye-opening for me. And looking at it, the ecosystem, when I looked at the ecosystem, to me, it looked like the ecosystem was very nascent and really not evolved enough, or it's just getting to me, I feel like we're in the 1 yard line even. Not just Atlanta, Atlanta, if you think about it, we're such a cosmopolitan city, and think about it, we're still in the 1 to 2 yard line. Around the world and around the in the United States, around the country, it's still very early. I think where social entrepreneurship and impact will really scale is, I think what Willie mentioned, is beyond just philanthropy. When it starts getting into social impact can actually mean money and profit, and that's where we'll see scale. I think we are the starting point, within the Atlanta Metro and in the city of Atlanta. And I think, the opportunities are great. I think with everything that happened in the last 2 years since COVID and everything that transpired after that, people's eyes have really opened up, for the positive. But I think it's great that, we're towards that trajectory, right?
How can social impact funds be better used to foster social impact in the state? I'm gonna give you.
Well, I just talked a lot. I'll just say what I just said. Is to, God, the more I hear the term, the more I'm like, I don't like it because it's too narrow. Because I could imagine everyone you work with, you could show me what they do, and I say, it's social impact focused, but I could take this down to any investor. We've got multiple venture capitalists on our board. And I would imagine, you know, a lot of those would be like, well, this is just a great business idea. And so I think that social impact, it goes to this new idea around getting from, what is it, stockholder capitalism into stakeholder capitalism. Now, we recognize that there are a lot of probably reasons why people would want to change that don't have anything to do with actually changing anything. However, I do think the idea of stakeholder capitalism, when we're going into this new era around green energy and how important and important climate change is, how, you know, with what's happening in the rest of the world around how our dependence on certain energy sources is forcing us to look at new ones. But now that's becoming a business imperative. And I feel as if that's the way that social impact can do that, is to tell their story. The social part of it is super important and should always, I think, be the primary story driver. But I still think that we live in a capitalist society. This is how dollars move. We have to make the business case as well. And like I said before, when we focus too much on the social impact to the detriment of the financial impact, because that's what the philanthropists are looking for, as opposed to what the investors otherwise are looking for, we don't have those things speaking to one another. Therefore, the social impact becomes more minimal because they're not able to get the dollars or the attention they need in order to actually make what they are trying to make happen.
Before you speak, MK, I have like it's going to be, I'm going to dovetail into what you said previously. When you meet with student entrepreneurs, you often view my pitch like last semester. You talked the importance of taking the audience on a hero's journey. Walk us through how that concept works for entrepreneurs pitching their solutions and how we can learn a little bit more from that framework to push social impact, like not only in Georgia, but like just worldwide.
Yeah, that's a great question. I agree with everything you said. You're absolutely right. The elephant is in the room, and nobody wants to talk about it, right? But it's true that we live in this largely male-dominant Caucasian society, right? And it's been that way for a long time. We have to change that narrative. But also the other thing is that what investors look at, or when they're investing in any business, social impact or not, they're looking at the profitability and how much money it can make. And the way they evaluate that is they evaluate that through the lens of a TAM, like how big that market is, and what's the total available market, and what's the buying power of that market, and how much will they spend. And so what I teach the entrepreneurs that come through the Main Street program is how to make that TAM very lucrative, to the audience, to the investor. And the way I do that is I tell them to bring the audience into their hero's lens, looking through their hero's lens, and their hero is their customer, right? And if they understand that customer, that hero, and take them on that journey, then basically what happens is the audience can relate to, okay, why is this, number one, why is this important? Number two, how it will make money. Because there is a TAM, there is a big, there's a total available market that's large enough to really address any of this, what I will call social mission. Whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's something like healthy community, clean water for all, lead, clean up the lead lines, whatever it is, there is a market there that can really help the investors capitalize. And the only way they'll understand it is if you tell them, like, this is how I make money, they don't care. What they care is, what is that mission and why is that important to them? And this is a really funny story. I've been watching this show on Apple called We Crashed. It's about this guy, Adam Newman, who we all know of, started WeWork. And at the heyday, he raised about $18.4 billion from SoftBank, valued at $47 billion. When they went public, the company was valued at 1/10 that price, which is $4 billion, nowhere close. But Masayoshi, who was the founder and CEO of SoftBank at the time, I remember there's a scene where Adam Newman is trying to show his pitch deck, and Masayoshi says, I don't care about your pitch deck. I care about you and your customers. Tell me about them. And he sells this vision of loneliness is bad, community is good, and we are on this mission to help solve loneliness. And everybody signed on to that. You know, SoftBank did for $18.4 billion, and so is, you know, and there you go. Whether it's good or bad for the founder, that's a different story. But the thing is, what I tell the founders is, take the audience and investor on a journey on your mission. And everybody wants to, you know, go on a mission. Nobody wants to go on this like selling a little bit of software to just for a little bit of money here.
How has showing up as your authentic selves impacted the work you have done as founders and enablers in the social impact?
Well, that's why I told you you might regret coming to me first in the beginning. So we just had our Civic Honors celebration awards. You were actually there. And I was given an award, and Cicely Garrett, who is an incredible community organizer in the city of Atlanta, they did this video of kind of responses about me and my work and all that, because I got a surprise award. And one of the things that she said was that I just do the work and I don't think about the very real implications to me personally. And I think that's 100% true, because I cannot think about that, or I wouldn't do the work, because of exactly what you're saying. Like, the system's not going to change overnight. It's probably not going to change in my lifetime. And so me really pointing out those ugly pieces and really not being in a position to force investors or philanthropy even to change has put me in a really weird place. So I will just start there. However, the one area that I think I am able to make a very big difference is really encouraging myself, and by leading, you know, and sharing my personal journey through liberation and experience with Black Joy, encouraging the entrepreneurs that are doing the work right now to take care of themselves in a very deep, profound way, to insist that their boards, that the leadership and people that are in position of power, even their funders, allocate space and resources for them to concentrate on building their legacies, for them to feel comfortable developing succession plans, and for them to be able to take paid funded sabbaticals. So those are like very broad things that that I focus on right now, and that has transformed the way I view things personally. But we also, you know, think about just basic daily activities around self-care. So that's how I think the work has impacted me, and also how I've impacted the work.
Kind of to what you were just saying about the person that said, I can't bring my, you know, I have to be so focused on the work. I think that's where I've always been, because
That was me.
oh, okay. I agree that you can't, it's hard to do both. And I think that for me, sometimes I'll be in a conversation and, you know, I'll look around the room and it's all, you know, white man I'm talking to. And I'm just thinking, like, because it'll, you know, it'll get heated or something like that. And I'm saying, we need to do this, and they're all coming at me. And I just think, what is the name of this? Like, what is going on right now? Like, why? And I have to take a step back, because I'm kind of cowering. I'm like, they're all coming at me with all these different things, but I really feel passionately about what I'm saying, and I think I'm right. And I kind of have to say to myself, I am right. So let me do this, because I'm working through, we're based at Emory University, which is, you know, it's as white as it can get. And I don't say that in a condescending way, or like whiteness is bad, but what I mean is that Emory University's history with supporting underrepresented communities is not great, even to this day. And so for me, I'm like, I'm in this space where I'm doing it here. And so I have to make sure I'm holding people accountable. I have to make sure that I'm keeping us focused on what our mission is. I mean, there have been some things that people have brought, and I've been like, are you serious? That is completely antithetical to what we're trying to do. And they have all of their reasons why we should do it this way and all of these things. And I think not to belabor this, but I think the further we get away from the summer of 2020, and I keep pointing to that because that was where a lot of my work in this space at Emory has come from, is the more easy it is to be like, well, maybe we don't need to be so narrowly focused on these groups.
right.
Maybe we can be a little, what about women? What about this? What about that? And I'm like, I can point you to 12 funds that focus on female entrepreneurs, and that's a great thing. We can't do everything. And if we start doing that, we're gonna do nothing. So it's things like that. And so for me, I have to bring out of myself, growing up in a Black church in Arkansas, bring all of that I learned into those conversations to be like, you know what, I'm just gonna go in. And so that's, I think, how it comes in for me, because I have to constantly remind myself, like, I am here representing a point of view. And if I allow all of this to overwhelm me and I just kind of back down because I'm, scared in the moment, I'm not gonna actually achieve it, so.
And I'm gonna add something else to this question. What are the tools and resources needed to bring the funding and resources to those impact areas? I mean, like Willie's thinking, so I'm gonna bring it.
Okay, yeah, no, absolutely. So I think it goes to the original question, I think, 2 questions ago. I think we're still in the early part of social mission and social impact. I think there's still a lot of things to, there's a lot of areas that can be addressed, through social impact, ideas, concept, businesses. Because again, for the longest time, it was looked at as like just a philanthropic, thing. And now we're looking at it really from a scale perspective, which is for profit. From a fund perspective, I always tout the Main Street Seed Fund. I think it's a great fund because we don't only invest in the entrepreneur, we don't actually invest because we don't take any equity from the founders of the entrepreneurs. It's a pure grant. It's non-dilutive, but also we give all the coaching and workshops and mentorship to really help them launch their business. So,
All right, Willie.
I think everything's underfunded. I think that's just what it comes down to. And I think going all the way back, I feel like so much of the work in social entrepreneurship is underfunded. And so for me, I go back to how do we improve the network? How do we improve the ecosystem to talk better to itself, to figure out when there's so much money, whenever this major, bank or major corporation comes out and says, we're going to give $1 billion to support fill in the blank. How do we better hold them accountable to say, you know what? Okay, we're going to track you along the way to see where this money is, because these places will make those kind of proclamations to the work that you were talking about earlier. And then you go 5 years later, you're like, not a quarter of that has gone to where you said it was going to go or anywhere. So I think for me, I think that's what I'm also trying to wrap my head around is how do you create that accountability? How do you create that tracking? So it's not just this internal thing where they say we gave $15 million to these kinds of things, but seeing where did that money actually end up? I think that's a mechanism that doesn't exist now. And that would help us to better understand where is money actually ending up, if anywhere, and how can it better get to where it actually belongs.
I look at you whenever he's asking about money first, because I'm like, this is the money man. Clearly he knows more than me, but I will say that our recommendations to philanthropy are a good guide, I think, for anyone who is considering investing in communities. I think to MK's point about scale, it's inevitable right now that, that is, it's a different conversation once you start talking about scale. But I think one of the things that we focus on when it comes to just trying to change the way philanthropy is investing in the folks that we are so closely connected to and aligned with is just, the process, right? So one of the main recommendations is like, what is the application process? What does it look like? What are you asking of someone to just have a chance at, a $10,000 grant? Is it reasonable? And what, we give recommendations on how to adjust that. We also talk about the investor or the funder, in our case, their proximity to the work. Do you even know the community that you are trying to support? Like, do you understand the challenges? And so are you just pouring money into a space to say that you've done that, or have you taken the time? And it takes time. And I think that's one thing that we don't want to allow, is to build those relationships, to extend those networks. So that time factor and proximity to the work, whether it's direct proximity or connecting with folks who are embedded and rooted in the community. So, again, I mean, we really looked at this very deeply. And I think at the end of the day, it boils down to, what is, in our case, what is philanthropy willing to do to look at itself and, atone for the harm that's already been caused, but also build a new process that's actually respectful and understands the problems.